loads of reaction to the massive rally. One editorial board predicts Trump will win if he does more speeches like it. Another headline says Trump's Bronx rally looked very different than the usual MAGA crowd. The piece argues Trump's chances of getting even close to winning areas like the Bronx are slim, but his efforts in places like New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia would go a long way in showing he is serious about courting non-traditional Republican voters and could even force Democrats to spend more resources shoring up the Democratic base. The New York Post, meantime, cover calling it some uptown funk. Trump storms deep blue Bronx with love fest. Doug Collins, former Republican congressman for Georgia, and Richard Fowler, Fox News contributor, join me now. Gentlemen, great to see you on a Friday.
Good to see you, Julie.
Good to see you as well.
Richard, let me ask you, Donald Trump, he made a direct appeal specifically to Black and Hispanic voters. That is obviously one of the bluest parts of the country in the Bronx. And he's right. Biden did not go to the Bronx, but he probably feels like he doesn't need to. He boasted that he could expand the electoral map into traditionally Democratic strongholds. He got big cheers. What do you think this is going to do to the minority public that are watching from home that don't live in the Bronx, considering he's talking about things that affect the minority community? The economy, the border crisis, mass deportation of illegal immigrants. These are major issues for minorities.
Look, there's no question that this was a very well-played move by the president, or the former president, rather. We're talking about it at 11:05 in the morning, so that tells you that it worked. But with that being said, I do think this provides an opportunity for the Biden campaign to tell their story in a very, very unique way. When you talk about the Bronx in New York City is a place where the Biden story is actually the loudest, right? Because the Bronx is the city, the borough in New York that has the highest rate of diabetes. And what we know the Biden administration did do is they capped the rate of insulin to no more than $35 a month. So the Biden campaign should be out there saying, listen, Trump might give you a rally. We gave you insulin and we gave it to you at a cheaper cost. And this is where the Biden campaign needs to be a lot sharper in their message to the American people, minority voters specifically. Here's what we've done over the past couple of years. And tomorrow, when we win re-election, here's what we're going to do to make your life better. Here's what we're going to do to make the economy better. As Bill Clinton would often say, don't stop thinking about tomorrow when he ran for re-election.
Right. All right, Doug, 2 years ago, Governor Hochul angered Republicans when she told GOP candidates in the state to get out of town. And you just saw her there on CNN, that clip that we played before I came to you. She needs to look at the numbers because the numbers go from double digits to single digits. So he's obviously making some headway here. How does that change the Democratic strategy and for Biden in particular? He's losing minorities. That's a fact.
Well, it is a fact. I think what we have here, and I think Richard rightfully pointed out, was a good play by the president. Look, as you look at this, it's a matter of inches. Lee Zeldin showed that if you ran a campaign and went to areas that traditional Republicans had not been going to in New York, you get closer and closer. You add more voters. Remember, this is a sum total of the entire state, not just a certain area like the Bronx or others. But if you add more voters, more minority voters, those who feel left out, those who feel disenfranchised from the current economies, the immigration situation, then you're adding more and more, not only for the presidential ticket, but also down ticket as well. And I think the derisive sort of just playing it off as Republicans, we don't care, is probably not the best attitude. And as far as, the other battleground states, right now, Donald Trump can afford to go to the Bronx and to do this while he's there and not spend a whole lot of time or effort to do it because he is ahead in most of the battleground states. So, again, I think the biggest issue here is not necessarily looking at the Bronx, but it's also saying, and I thought it was really interesting, and I appreciate Richard's perspective here, but, I mean, if you're now trying to demographic down to the diabetes voters in the Bronx to sell your electoral package, then you got a problem because they're going to McDonald's, they're going to the grocery store.
Right. Well, and they're also filling up their gas tanks, and that's hurting them as well.
Exactly.
I mean, when it comes to the economy. But I want to switch gears here just a second here. We hear it from the president and Democrats that the economy is just great. But the numbers tell a very different, painful story. The prices for Americans are no joke here. Since Biden took office, food is costing you 20% more, gas 50% more. Huge majorities of voters are saying prices of those necessities are a problem for their families, and that makes this sound pretty tone deaf. Watch.
We've already turned around. I think the nation's not in good shape, but they're personally in good shape. The polling data has been wrong all along.
We have the best economy in the world, and since I've come to office, the GDP is up.
We've had the lowest unemployment rate for a long, long time. We've been in a situation where I've forgiven an awful lot of debt from the folks, college debt, billions of dollars of it, so people can start their lives again.
That's just a sample of headlines on the issue here. Biden not fooling voters on economy. Americans aren't following for the Biden spin machine's lies about the economy. It's still the economy, stupid. This alarming warning from polling guru Nate Silver. He posted this. If Biden is still struggling in the polls by August, he needs to consider stepping aside. It's not a great situation for Democrats either way, but you have to do due diligence on the question. It's an important election, obviously. It shouldn't be taboo to talk about it. Doug, that is something that I believe that the Democrats need to be a little frightened by, because when you see Republicans making a play at minorities is one thing, but when you look at the economy and political playbook, as we just put the headline up there, it's still the economy, stupid. You don't need to be stupid. You need to respect these voters, and they mean what they say. They cannot afford their groceries and their gas. What is the Biden campaign going to do about that to convince them that they're going to make it better?
Well, compared to what they've done so far, I'm not real sure. I think it was earlier said they're going to try and make the message that the economy is better, unemployment. They'll point to things that they've had. But the problem you have here is that reality matches the Republicans' talking points here. Reality is that immigration is an issue that is affecting not only the economy, but our public safety. Then you have the economy itself. You showed the numbers, 20%, 50% increases. These are not negotiable points. You're entitled to your own opinion in the Biden administration, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And I think that's the problem that they're getting in the way of, is they're trying to convince people of things that they can't see. They can go to the polls and to their gas station. They can see the price. They can go to the grocery store. They see the price. They go to these areas where they're spending money, and they understand that their wages are not keeping up. Yeah. This is what they've got to overcome. And I think it's interesting to say August is the time frame, because you're less than 5 months out now before early voting starts. This is becoming a more painted in picture for them. They're going to have to describe it any way they can, but the reality is not matching the perception that voters have.
I want you to listen to Democratic strategist James Carville getting pretty frustrated with Biden cartering too much to the left. Let's watch.
One question I'd love for the Biden White House to answer: why are they so afraid of the left? I mean, they up on immigration policy. They can't even win in deep blue areas. And they come into conflict with loosely aligned voters that we have to have. They have very little connection to Black America at all. Yet they proportionally punch way above their weight. And I just, somebody understand it.
I think that's a great point there, Richard, that Biden needs to be very careful not to cater to the left, because the left is actually what's killing him. He needs to go back to maybe original Biden and go down the middle. He campaigned as a moderate, remember, when he got elected, and he has been catering to the left more and more and more throughout his presidency, and I think it's backfired.
Julie, I think it's actually important that we focus on the facts here. And when you look at the United States versus our global partners, what the president said in that interview is actually true. We are doing better than our global partners. What's also true is that for many American families, they're not feeling that. What they're feeling is higher than normal gas prices, higher than normal grocery store bills. And I think the president has to communicate that in a real way. And he also needs to remember that elections are about contrast. So you're contrasting you versus what your opponent's going to do. What we've heard from the Trump campaign is he wants to impose $3 trillion tariff, a 10% tariff on $3 trillion of trade from China. The Peterson Institute this week said that will cost the American family, each American family, almost $1,700. That's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. That's more money than they're currently paying, money that they don't have. And that's the contrast that the Biden campaign needs to make now more than ever.
Richard Fowler,
I think Richard just forgot that the Biden administration just decided they wanted to put tariffs on Chinese products as well.
Not to the tune of not $3 trillion, not $3 trillion, not on all $3 trillion worth of trade.
All right. Doug Collins, thank you, Richard. We appreciate you both. Thank you, and have a great weekend and holiday.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.